Last night in West Texas, it happened actually in the middle of the show. We gave you breaking news on it, but now we have far more details. An explosion happened at a fertilizer plant. Now, first of all, let me show you the amazing video. You're going to see a fireball here, and then it gets worse.
Looks like it just jumped out the window.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Oh, you okay?
Dad?
You okay?
Dad, I can't hear.
Come here.
I can't hear. Get out of here. Please get out of here.
Oh my God.
Please get out of here. Please get out of here. Oh,
Man, that is terrifying. Now, they're saying that they believe it's an accident. You know, when I first heard the story, I thought, wow, they're 20 miles outside of Waco, Texas, 2 days away from the anniversary of the Waco incident. It's in the middle of April. It's a couple of days after the Boston bombing, and it's this giant explosion in the middle of Texas. And I was worried. I was worried that those were related. For the moment being, it looks like there are sometimes coincidences. It doesn't happen very often, but it does look like this is a coincidence. It's interesting, there was also a fertilizer plant in France that exploded relatively soon after 9/11. So it's a fascinating, incredibly weird coincidence. But so far, it looks unintentional. Now, the death toll here is devastating, and the injuries. I mean, it wiped out blocks at a time there. And there was a school nearby. There was a place that they took care of senior citizens nearby, a nursing home, West Rest Haven Nursing Home. And this was gigantic. Now, latest we heard was that at least 15 people have been killed and 160 have been wounded. Right before the show, BuzzFeed came out and said actually 40 people were killed. I don't know if that's true. As these stories develop, you have to take all the information you get with a grain of salt. But any way you cut it, a lot of people have died. And it's interesting because in Boston, less people died, about the same amount of people injured. But when it's a terrorist attack, when it's intentional, we pay a lot more attention to it. And that's very understandable. But you know what? Part of the reason we pay a lot of attention to it, if it's intentional, is because we want to prevent it from happening again. And we want some degree of justice. But we also have to be very, very careful to not let, if this is an accident, accidents like this happen again. Because those 15 to 40 people are dead either way. Those 160 people are injured, some of them gravely so, either way. And if it was a matter of negligence, and we don't know that it was, and this is very important, okay? If it was, well then, we got to make absolutely sure that all the regulations are followed to a T in all of these kind of volatile fertilizer plant situations. You remember the Murrah building was blown up by fertilizer. I mean, obviously it was a bomb fashioned from fertilizer, so obviously this is very explosive. They might have made a mistake here. We don't know that as well as a certainty, but apparently you're not supposed to put water on ammonium, and they might have accidentally done that here, making the ammonia, making the explosion that much worse. But again, that's not confirmed yet. But I only bring that up as an example because it's important that you have strict regulation in a situation like this. Now, this plant apparently in 2006 was fined by the EPA, and they said that it was for failing to have a risk management plan that met federal standards. Well, now that's back in 2006. But obviously that's grave concern as we just had this entire plant explode and kill all these people. Now, they had submitted a report to the EPA. And see, this is why you have to be careful. This is why you need government. Because the company is always going to say, oh, we have no safety problems. The company is always going to say, no, don't make me spend more money on regulations or safety, because they want to make an extra buck in the short term, right? And at the time, they said the worst possible scenario would be a 10-minute release of ammonia gas that would kill or injure no one. Well, they were 1,000,000% wrong about the worst possible scenario. You just saw the worst possible scenario, and it was not just 10 minutes of gas. So you can't take the company's word for it. They have a financial incentive to do as little as possible. Now, theoretically, you know, if their plant explodes, I mean, I don't know what their insurance situation is, but it could also cost them money. But they never think that way. 9 out of 10 times they think in the short term. Cut corners, cut corners. That's why you need the government to protect civilians, to make sure that the companies don't save a buck by cutting corners so that plants don't explode. So my libertarian friends are right on a lot of issues. But on issues like this, they're totally wrong. The free market does not regulate this by itself. It's not like, well, enough fertilizer plants blow up, and then we realize that the free market realizes that they should be a little bit more careful around fertilizer plants. No, they always go for the quick buck. You need somebody on the watch to say we can't let this happen. And by the way, who are the people on the watch? Well, that's the Chemical Safety Board. And don't fret, they have a whopping budget of a little over $11 million for 2013. And by the way, that's their request. They didn't even necessarily get it, okay? And they're on the scene now trying to figure out how this went wrong. You know, they're being on the scene to prevent it ahead of time. I know it's a very tough job. I'm not necessarily blaming them, but I wouldn't mind that if they had more resources to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen. And by the way, how many investigators do they have for the entire country? Only 25. Now, look, you know, obviously there's some limit. I don't know what the correct number of investigators are, but I do know apparently there wasn't enough because something went dramatically wrong in Texas, and we had this gigantic explosion that caused great damage. And this is exactly what the government is supposed to do. Watch out to make sure that private companies don't make these kind of mistakes.